I am 71 years old, and I want to tell you something that took me 30 years and every country I ever lived in to finally understand. The freedom I was chasing was never in any of those places. It was in the people I kept leaving behind. I was 28 when I left, young, restless, certain that the life waiting for me somewhere else was bigger than the one I had at home. My mother packed me a small bag of food for the journey, even though I told her I didn't need it. She packed it anyway. That is the kind of woman she was. She never asked me to stay. She just stood at the gate and watched me go, holding her hands together the way she always did when she was trying not to cry. I told myself I would be back in 2 years, maybe 3, just long enough to see something of the world, save some money, and come home with a story worth telling. That was 1982. I did not come home, truly come home, until I was past 60. I want to be honest with you. The early years were extraordinary. I will not pretend otherwise. I arrived in a new country with almost nothing, and I built a life from scratch. I learned a language that was not mine. I found work. I found a small apartment with a window that looked out over a street I slowly learned to love. There is a specific kind of pride that comes from surviving in a place that was not made for you. I felt it every day. I made friends. I traveled on weekends. I sent money home every month. And I felt, in a way that I am not proud of now, that the money excused my absence, that providing financially meant I did not also have to provide myself. I called home every Sunday. My mother's voice on the phone was the same every time, warm, steady. She always asked if I was eating properly. I always told her yes. I rarely was. There is something seductive about building a life in a place where no one knew who you were before. You can become anyone. You carry no history, no expectations, no version of yourself that other people remember and hold you to. I loved that feeling. At 28, at 30, even at 35, I loved it completely. What I did not understand then is that the same thing that felt like freedom was also a kind of erasure. When no one knows where you came from, no one fully knows who you are. And after enough years of that, you start to wonder yourself. The money was real. I want to say that honestly. I built something. I provided for my family back home. I helped my younger sister through school. I helped my parents fix the roof, buy a car, live with some comfort in their old age. That was not nothing. I do not dismiss it. But I have sat with the math of it in my old age, and I have asked myself, quietly, in the dark, whether there was another way, whether the sacrifice was necessary, or whether it was just the choice I made and the story I told myself to make peace with it. I still do not have a clean answer. What I know is this. The first time I came back to visit, maybe 3 years after I left, my youngest nephew did not recognize me. He was 4 years old. He hid behind my mother's leg and looked at me like a stranger. I laughed it off. Everyone laughed. But I remember standing there, in my mother's kitchen, in the house I grew up in, and feeling something I did not have a name for yet. I have a name for it now. It was the first bill coming due. If you are at the beginning of this journey, If you are packing your bag right now, full of plans and courage, and the particular excitement of someone who believes the best is still ahead, I am not here to frighten you. I am here to tell you to go with your eyes open. Know what the life you are building will cost, not in money, in time, in presence, in the ordinary days you will not be there for. Go, but know what you are spending, because one day you will be my age, and you will sit very quietly with the full account of your life, and you will want to know that you spent it on things that were worth it. In part 2, I will tell you about the years I stopped noticing what I was losing. Those were the most dangerous years of all. If you have not seen part 1 of this story, I want you to go back and watch it first, because what I am about to tell you only makes sense if you understand where I started. I left home at 28. By the time I turned 40, I had lived in 3 countries and built what most people would call a successful life. Good income, friends, a city I knew well enough to call my own. From the outside, it looked like everything was working, and that is exactly when it became dangerous. The dangerous thing about living abroad for a long time is not the loneliness in the beginning. You expect that, you prepare for it, you push through it and feel stronger for having survived it. The dangerous thing is what happens in the middle years, when you have built enough of a life that you stop noticing what you are missing. I stopped counting how many Christmases I missed. The first few I felt deeply. I would sit in my apartment on Christmas Eve and be aware of exactly what was happening at home without me, the table being set, the specific smell of my mother's kitchen, the noise of it, the particular comfort of being in a room full of people who had known you your whole life. I felt the absence of all of that very clearly in the beginning, but somewhere around the 4th or 5th year, I stopped feeling it so sharply. I made my own traditions. I spent the holidays with friends in the city. It was good. It was genuinely good. And that is how it happens. You replace the thing. The replacement is real. And slowly, without meaning to, you stop grieving what you left because you are no longer sure you remember exactly what it felt like. My father got sick when I was 44. It was serious, but not immediately life-threatening. The kind of illness that requires management, appointments, someone nearby to help carry the weight of it. My sister carried that weight. She always did. She was the one who stayed. I called twice a week. I sent money for the medical bills. I asked detailed questions and wrote down the answers and told myself I was involved. What I was actually doing was managing my own guilt from a safe distance. I did not go home for 3 months after the diagnosis. Work, a project that could not be delayed, reasons that felt real at the time and feel shameful to me now. When I finally went, my father had lost weight. He looked older than I remembered. He was glad to see me. He did not say anything about the 3 months. He never said anything. That was his way. But I saw something in my sister's face when I arrived that I understood perfectly and have never forgotten. She did not need to say a word. My father died 2 years later. I made it home in time for that one. I was in the room. I stood at his grave in a suit I had bought in another country. and I realized I barely knew the other people standing around me. Cousins who had grown into adults while I was away, neighbors who had been part of my parents' lives for decades. There were stories told about my father at the gathering afterward, funny stories, warm ones, stories from a life I had not been present for. I laughed along with everyone else, but inside I was sitting with something very quiet and very heavy. I had missed my father's life, not his death, his life, the last chapter of it. I had managed it remotely and told myself that counted. It did not count. I flew back the following week, back to the apartment, back to the work, back to the friends who asked how the trip home was and accepted my short answer and moved on to other things. That is what living abroad teaches you eventually. The two worlds do not mix. The people in your life abroad cannot fully hold the weight of what home means to you, and the people at home cannot fully understand the life you have built elsewhere. You become a person who is always slightly out of place in both directions. I thought of that as interesting for a long time, a citizen of the world, belonging everywhere. I understand now that I was belonging nowhere. Somewhere in my 50s, the loneliness changed shape. It was no longer the sharp loneliness of a young man far from home. It was something quieter and harder to name. I remember my 54th birthday. Good people around me. Laughter. Someone had ordered a cake. It was a warm evening, and the window was open, and by every measure it was a good night. And in the middle of all of it, I felt something so specific and so deep that I could not have explained it to anyone in that room. It was the loneliness of a man who had lived a full life that belonged to no one place and no one group of people. Not sad exactly, just untethered, like a boat that had been at sea so long it had forgotten what a harbor felt like. I want you to hear this part especially if you are in your 30s or 40s and living abroad and telling yourself that you will figure out the home question later. Later is when you are sitting at your own birthday party, feeling like a guest in your own life. Later is when your father's friends tell stories about him that you have never heard. Later comes, it always comes, and by the time it does, some of the things you were waiting to figure out have already been decided for you. I will tell you about coming home, about what I expected to find and what was actually waiting for me, about my mother's hands and the 18 months I will be grateful for until the day I die, and about what I know now, at 71, that I would give almost anything to have known at 40. If you have been watching this story from the beginning, thank you for staying with me. This is the part I find hardest to tell, not because it is the saddest, but because it is the most true. I came back at 63. I had pictured it many times over the years, the return, walking back into something familiar, being known again in the way you can only be known by people who have watched you grow up. I packed my life into boxes, said goodbye to a city that had been my home for longer than anywhere else, and I flew back to the place I was born. I told myself I was finally going home. What I found was that home had not been waiting for me. The streets were the same. Some of the buildings were different.
The sounds and the light and the smell of the air were exactly as I had carried them in my memory for 30 years. But I was different, and everything else had moved on without me. My mother was still alive. She was smaller than I remembered, moving more slowly. Her hands, which I had always thought of as strong, looked fragile in a way that stopped me in the doorway when I first saw her. She looked up and saw me, and she held my face in both of her hands, and she said nothing for a long moment, just held my face and looked at me. That silence told me everything about how long I had been gone, more than any words could have. My old friends welcomed me back genuinely. I want to say that clearly. There was no coldness, no punishment for the years away. But 30 years of shared life had passed between them while I was elsewhere. Children who had grown up together, losses they had carried together, arguments and repairs, and the particular intimacy that only forms between people who have been present for each other through ordinary time. I arrived into the middle of all of that like a guest at a party that had been going on for decades without me. Welcomed warmly, included, but not woven in, not the way they were woven in with each other. You cannot catch up on ordinary days. They are gone the moment they pass. That is what makes them precious, and that is what I had spent 30 years giving away. My mother and I had 18 months together after I came back. I want to tell you about those 18 months. I drove her to her appointments. I sat with her in the mornings while she drank her tea. I learned, after all those years, the rhythm of her day, what she liked to watch in the evenings, which neighbor she trusted and which one irritated her, the small, specific details of a person's life that you only learn by being present for them. I learned my mother in those 18 months in a way I had not known her since I was a child living under her roof, and I was grateful. Every single day I was grateful that I had come back when I did, that I had not waited one more year, one more reason, one more careful plan. She died on a quiet morning in the spring. I was there. I was holding her hand. And in the weeks before, sitting beside her bed in the evenings, I thought about all the ordinary Tuesdays I had missed. All the mornings she had made coffee alone in that kitchen and looked out the window on a street that did not have me in it. All the times she had not called because she did not want to burden me. All the things she had carried in silence so that I could live freely somewhere far away. She never once asked me to come home, not once in 30 years. She loved me in the way that certain mothers love, completely, without condition, without ever making you feel the weight of what your absence cost her. And I took that love for granted for 30 years. I spent it like it was endless, like it would always be there when I was finally ready to receive it properly. And then one morning it was gone. And there is no amount of money and no collection of experiences and no version of freedom in any country in the world that I would not give up to have one more ordinary Tuesday with her. I'm 71 now. I live alone in the city where I was born. I have built something small here, quietly. A cafe where they know my name. A park where I walk every morning regardless of the weather. A neighbor I look out for and who looks out for me. My old friends include me more now. Time has a way of softening the gaps. It is not what it would have been if I had stayed. That life does not exist anymore. But it is real, and it is mine, and I am grateful for it. I want to speak now directly to whoever needs to hear this. If you are abroad right now, if you are young and the world feels open and full of possibility in every direction, I am not here to tell you not to go. Go, see what the world teaches you, build the life you need to build. But I am asking you to do one thing. Do not manage your family from a distance and call it being there. Do not let money become the substitute for presence. Do not tell yourself you will go home when things settle down. Things do not settle down. Life does not pause to give you a convenient moment to show up for the people who love you. Call your mother, not a message, a call. Let her hear your voice. Go home when you can, not when it's easy, when you can. Be there for the ordinary days. I know at 71 what I did not know at 35. The ordinary days were the whole thing. The coffee in the morning, the quiet evenings, the small conversations that seemed like nothing at the time and turned out to be everything. That was the life. Not the adventures, not the freedom, not the money or the passport stamps, or the pride of surviving in places that were not made for you. The life was the ordinary days, and I spent 30 years somewhere else while they were happening. That's my story. I hope it costs you less to learn from it than it cost me to live it. That's all I have. That's everything.